Hi everyone, Flaming Footy here and welcome back to a new video on the channel. And today guys, we're going to be continuing our AFL 2023 round previews. In today's video, I'm going to be previewing every game of round 6, which is the upcoming round. But before we go ahead and do round 5, little quick review, which was gather round. The Crows beat the Blues by 56, the Dockers beat the Suns by 10, Sydney beat Richmond by 44, Brisbane beat North Melbourne by 75, Essendon beat Melbourne by 27, Port Adelaide beat the Western Bulldogs by 14, Geelong beat West Coast by 47, GWS beat Hawthorn by 2, and the Pies beat the Saints by 6. And here is the current ladder heading into the round. If you want to go ahead and pause to see where your team is at, you can go ahead and do so. Alright, here we go. Round 6 preview. First game of the round is Fremantle versus Western Bulldogs on the Friday night at Optus Stadium. And this is going to be a big game, massive game. Both these two sides need they need a win here, really. The loser's going to find things very tough from here. And yeah, you really want to avoid that 2-4 start to the year. Both these two sides are at 2-3 at the moment, and a 2-4 start to the year would be a horrendous start for both these two finals contenders, really, I reckon. I feel like both these sides would want to be playing finals footy by the end of the year. Both these sides definitely would well and truly have that within their club beliefs for this year, and the loser going 2-4 is really a rough start to the year. At Optus Stadium, you do give the Dockers a slight edge. However, the Dogs, they've been alright. They've stood up in some big games and failed in some really important games, though, like games against Melbourne and St Kilda. They got thrashed, and then they beat the Lions and the Tigers, and then last week's loss to Port. They were disappointing, to say the least. And the Dockers, well, their starts of the year had been pretty horrible, and last week versus Suns, it was a good enough performance. It wasn't overly convincing, but it was a good enough one just to go, okay, well, there's a bit of belief back. And I think with that belief carried over from last week, I think the Dockers can do it in front of their home fans, but I would not be surprised if there was a dismal Dockers performance coming Friday night at Optus Stadium. They could be in for an absolute shocker. Port Adelaide versus West Coast is the first game on the Saturday, and this is a bit of an Anzac Day matchup. Port Adelaide versus West Coast. It's been, at least it was last year anyway, and yeah, these two sides clashing again at the Adelaide Oval, and West Coast looked okay versus the Cats last week. I'm going to say it was actually a decent game for them. They lost by 45 or something like that, 46 or something like that. And they're actually alright. I thought West Coast actually played a little bit differently. It was just the Cats just killed him over quarters 2 and 3. But after a decent last quarter, they actually looked okay. Port Adelaide, last week versus the Dogs, they got the job done. They did very well in the wet, and I think they'll be in for a pretty nice, comfortable win here by about 50 points. They're so good at the Adelaide Oval, I think they'll get a nice win here. GWS versus Brisbane is the next game. We're using Manuka Oval for the first time this year in that Saturday twilight time slot. Brisbane, they've been a bit away from home this year, so are the Giants in for one of the upsets of the season? Maybe. Don't rule them out just yet. However, they are going to have to do it without Tom Green, one of their up-and-coming emerging stars, who is banned after his dangerous tackle or bump, I believe. So I don't think he will be in the side. Brisbane versus North Melbourne last week were brilliant. It took them a little while to shut them down, but when they did shut them down, they were off and rolling for sure, and they got a very nice win on the board. I think they'll get another nice one here. I think they'll win by 35 points and really stake why they are a flag contender yet again. Geelong versus Sydney, the grand final rematch, is a Saturday night game at Cardinia Park. First game at GMHBA this year. Now, I believe GMHBA's renovations are done sometime between round 10 and 16. So they're going to be hosting way more games after round 16 at GMHBA to round out the year. But yes, I'm pretty sure it's round 15 or 16 where it actually is done, and they host more games towards the back end of the year. But this is a big game. Geelong versus Sydney at GMHBA. Both these two sides have good records there. We know in the COVID-affected years, the Swans played a couple games down there and smashed the sides they played against. And the Cats, well, we obviously know that's their home ground, and both these two sides, I reckon, still need to make a statement. The Cats, they've been very good in the past couple of weeks. They need to prove a statement they can beat a quality opposition. And Sydney, well, their last few weeks have been a bit rocky for them. So I feel like both these two sides do need to make a statement. No better time to do it than in the grand final rematch. I think the Cats hold on for a 9-point thriller here, but that's going to be a very interesting contest. Hawthorn versus Adelaide is the first game on the Sunday. Hawthorn always seem to play UTAS in this Anzac Day round, always down at UTAS for the Hawks. They play the Crows this year, and this is going to be a challenge. The Crows, we saw what they did to Carlton. They really opened them up and exposed them last week in gather round. Hawthorn, on the other hand, played okay against the Giants, but it was mainly the Giants' inaccuracy that actually kept them in it. As Tasmania, you could almost prove a claim that the Hawks are a bit of a different side. They like it down there. Conditions, they seem to know them, and the last couple of years, they've actually beaten Brisbane down there. They've beaten some decent sides down at UTAS Stadium. The Crows, though, this year, they're a young, up-and-coming side still. They've looked really good in the past few weeks. I think they're going to continue on their merry ways and win by 34 points. Carlton versus St Kilda, big game at Marvel Stadium. This is one of the must-watch games of the round as well. St Kilda, they've been in great form. They've been in great form all year. They lost their first game to the Pies last week, which is definitely disappointing for them. And Carlton got absolutely smashed by Adelaide and still are winless at the Adelaide Oval. So both these two sides, after both losing last week, I feel like the winner really makes a response here. Carlton, they definitely need to respond more than the Saints do, but the Saints put up just as a disappointing performance, lucky enough to only lose the game by 6. Now, it's going to be the better side wins here. It's at Marvel. It's a really interesting contest. I think the Saints do win this one. A little bit of an upset, you could say. But yeah, I feel like Carlton are going to have a little bit of a downer patch now, and they're going to lose 2 games in a row, and it's going to be very interesting from here. But yeah, I think the Saints win this game. Gold Coast versus North Melbourne is the next game at Heritage Bank Stadium. And again, both these two sides, 16th versus 13th. North Melbourne are higher than we probably thought. Gold Coast, 16th, round 6. One win, I believe, does not cut it. For where they need to be this year, Gold Coast, for where they need to be at least, I mean, really they need to be making finals, but for me, it would be at least contending for finals. 16th after round 5. 1 win after the first 5 rounds. Really just doesn't cut it for me. For where Gold Coast should be, the list is actually pretty good, and their win coming against the Cats, which was a great win, by the way. But yeah, they should have held on against the Dockers last week. And now North Melbourne could be just as big of a challenge. North have been alright. Now, it'd be rude to tip against the Suns here. I think some people have tipped against the Suns going north, but nah, I'm sticking with the Suns. I think they will win this game. I think they'll get a nice win as well, about 30 points or 35 points. But yeah, they need to win this game. Otherwise, their season is in all sorts. Losing to North at their home ground, that'd be a disaster. Melbourne versus Richmond, the Anzac Day Eve game on the Monday night, the MCG. Both these two sides need to respond. Last week for both these two sides wasn't very pretty. Melbourne in the wet. Their defence looked a little bit out of whack against a undermanned Essendon forward line. And Richmond this season has just been a disaster so far. 1 win, 3 losses, and a draw, I believe. So not looking good for them. Their 2-star recruits have been alright. They've played pretty decently. And last week versus Sydney, they were in it for most of the game. They just lost it in the last quarter. So Richmond need to play this full game out. And otherwise, if they don't get the result here, their season could be in all sorts of strife and problems for where they need to be making finals this year. I think they're going to lose. I think the Demons are going to give them a real reality check. They're going to be back on their winning ways, and they're going to win this game by, again, roughly that 30-point margin. Anzac Day, as good as it is, Collingwood versus Essendon, 3rd versus 2nd this year. Unbelievable stuff. These two sides are rocking and rolling in 2023. Collingwood versus Essendon, big battle here. And Essendon are going to be without their skipper, Zach Merritt, for a dangerous bump or dangerous tackle at the tribunal. They lost, and no Zach Merritt at all. So this is a big game. I feel like Collingwood win it by 7, but Anzac Day is always great, and the reason why I've said 7 points is because, it's always a thriller. Will be again. Alright, so my tips for the round are Fremantle, Port Adelaide, Brisbane, Geelong, Adelaide, St Kilda, Gold Coast, Melbourne, and Collingwood. And after my round with margins, so make sure you go ahead and watch my tipping video if you want to see the exact margins and scores. But after round 6, this is how I see the ladder being with all of the margins and scores put onto Skill. So if you want to pause, see where your team's at, see where every other team is at, make sure you go ahead and do that. But make sure you go ahead and watch tipping to find out the margins that I've tipped them by and the scores, so then you can exactly see what this ladder really means. Alright, and also, by the way, here is some of the top player stats as well. Little interesting thing to do in the round previews as well, just to see how players are faring, but those are the player stats as well. Jeremy Cameron is currently leading the Coleman medal. Sicily's taken the most marks. Leigh's got the most score involvements, most disposals. Nick Dacos, top fantasy. Clayton Oliver tackles. James Rowbottom, contested possessions. Clayton Oliver. Alright, round 6 starts to look to be a massive round of footy. So thank you guys all so much for watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Sending you guys another video on the channel. Thank you guys all so much. Bye everyone. Flame Footy out.